Good afternoon, guests. Welcome to our wonderful World Read Aloud Day webinar. Speaking to you right now, it's Homoto. I represent Macmillan. I'd like to welcome you, one and all educators, parents, book lovers. We're all here gathered to enjoy this wonderful World Read Aloud Day webinar. Um, Brought to you for free by Macmillan. Now, before we get into the webinar, I'd just like to share some few points with you that reading aloud is more than just storytelling. It's a powerful tool for building literacy skills, fostering a love for books, and creating meaningful connections in the classroom, in the home, basically in many, many spaces. As we celebrate World Read Aloud Day today, we invite you to join us in making this day extra special. Now, one of the ways that Macmillan is making World Read Aloud Day special is by hosting many activities such as this one, free online read aloud workshops, that webinar that is going to get practical strategies to make your reading aloud sessions fun, engaging, and unforgettable. Now, one other thing that we're also doing is we promoted our news stories on our Macmillan Online Reading Corner that you can check out on YouTube, as well as 10 tips that we've shared on our emails to elevate your read aloud practices. Now, I'd like to introduce our presenter this afternoon, Dr. Heather Nadia Phillips. Dr. Phillips is a postdoctoral research fellow in the research doctorate at CPUT. 2025 marks 45 years of teaching experience for her, having held positions of deputy principal and principal at a primary school for 36 years, as well as lecture, under and postgraduate programs in the education faculty of CPUT. Dr. Phillips' research expertise within teacher education focusing on quality, professional development, pedagogy, critical thinking, and literacy. Her core responsibilities include publishing research articles, reviewing journal articles, supervision of postgraduate students, literacy training to develop critical thinking and reading for meaning in schools nationally, and the development of seminars focusing on research methodology. Dr. Phillips is the project director of Sisonke Supervision Mentorship Program, an institutional program aimed at developing postgraduate supervisors, and assisted in the planning and the implementation of the program since 2021. Dr. Phillips currently supervises 3 doctoral students and 4 master students. She has published more than 15 journal articles and 2 book chapters. Dr. Phillips, welcome.
Thank you so much, Mutsu.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Now, before I hand over to Dr. Phillips, I'd like to just guide our guests as they're arriving in numbers. We will be having a question and answer session right at the end. So you're welcome to just I'm not sure whether it's at the side from where you're viewing your webinar screen, the side or the top toolbar. You should have a bubble that says chat. You're welcome to drop any questions throughout the presentation. If you are referring to a specific slide, please make mention of that slide, and then we will try as much as possible to address or answer as many questions at the end of Dr. Phillips' presentation. Dr. Phillips, over to you.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, my dear colleagues. It's an absolute privilege to share this platform with you because you make the difference out there in the classroom. But I do want to say a very big thank you to Macmillan, to Alette, Hamotso, and Ricky for always contacting me and asking me to do this, and I absolutely love it. But I do hope my colleagues that are here, our teachers today, that you're going to take something from this webinar. And because it's World Read Aloud Day today, this presentation will look at the importance and the value of reading aloud and thinking aloud. And through these strategies, we will build vocabulary, we will boost comprehension, we will hopefully foster really great emotional bonds and inspire a lifelong passion for books and for imagination. So we'll, and I know I'm going to start off on a sadder note, but we have to also understand the context within which we are working and why this is so very important. So I want to start you off with the Pearls results, and I'm sure you're all aware of it, the Progress in International Reading Literacy Study results. Now, the Pearls results have really given us um, a lot to think about, a lot to think about. So they have a few benchmarks. Um, and really, Pearls looks at the ability level um, that's associated with each of these benchmarks. So we start at the lowest benchmarks, and this first one is below the low benchmark. And here we see that students perform way below the lowest benchmark. So um, they're really struggling. And then we have the low benchmark where the score is between 400 and 475, where students are performing just at or above this benchmark. And the intermediate benchmark, where students are performing above the lowest benchmark, the high benchmark, the advanced benchmark, where students perform at the highest level. And yes, these tests have been done regularly, and what does really get to me, and I'm sure to you as well, because you work with learners, are the results. Now the results has shown us, if you're looking at the benchmarks and you're looking at our results as a South African grade 4 children, we see that in the advanced benchmark, only 1% of South African children that were part of the study. In the high benchmark, only 2%. The intermediate benchmark, only 6%. And in the low benchmark, only 11%. What does that tell us? It tells us a story. It tells us, the stats shows us, that 81% of the grade 4 learners that participated in this study found themselves below the low benchmark. And that worries me. That I ask myself, what are we doing wrong? And then we go on, and that was grade 4. Now we go on and have a look at the grade 6 results. Very similar. Actually, the grade 6s did a little bit better, with only 56% below the low benchmark. So, in actual fact, what these stats are telling us is that 81% of South Africa's grade 4s cannot read for meaning. These are the 2021 results. And I know 2021 came just after COVID. But in the 2016 results, which was before COVID, there was 78% of learners that fell into this category. So, South Africa, this time around, was ranked last out of 43 countries. And they experienced the largest decline of all the countries participating. For us, it's important to note that the South African assessment, of which these are the statistics, occurred a year after the other countries were assessed. So yes, this is the international and a fast fact. Let me just tell you, what this has shown is that the average Brazilian grade 4 child is 3 years ahead of the average South African grade 4 child. So what are we to do, my dear colleagues? Yes, there were interventions considered by the powers that be, And they indicated that maybe we do need more teacher assistants. Maybe we need to look at new readers for our learners. Maybe we need to look at the training of teachers. And there I got stuck because I think we need to really assist our teachers in trying to change these statistics. Then we move closer to home. Locally, we now look at our systemic testing, which we know only occurs here in the Western Cape. But this gives us a very good idea, and it gives us a consistent record of the improvements and the declines in both mathematics and language. One of the main purposes of this systemic testing is really to analyze, to take the results, to analyze it, and use the results to inform our interventions so that we can improve. Now, in the systemic evaluation, we have 4 proficiency levels. Again, emerging right at the beginning of the grade level, not really at the grade level yet, evolving at the grade level, enhancing a little bit above and extending a little bit better. So let's look at how our grade 3s and 6s performed in our systemic tests, the last one being the 2022 results that we have. Again, here you will see that 37% of the grade 3s were at the first level. So it means they were not at the actual grade level. They were not performing at the grade level. 43% were performing at grade level, but 20% were above grade level. Grade 6s, the picture is a little prettier, with 30% performing below grade level, 37% at, and 33% above. So this is where we find ourselves, my dear colleagues. So and I have to say that the systemic results in the Western Cape just also shows a much better picture than the South African statistics. So we must be doing something right in the Western Cape. But there are implications for teaching. If we look at these statistics, if we look at the systemic results. And when you go through all of these implications, what it boils down to is that we need to increase our scaffolded instruction. We also need to connect knowledge to the real world context. I'm sorry, there's a spelling error. We need to build on knowledge and skills, and we need to empower our learners by teaching them how to think critically so that they can problem solve, so that they can assess themselves, so that they can produce higher levels of creativity, and they can infer. And what that means when we talk about critical skills is we're saying, let's teach our learners to predict, to infer, to make connections, to imagine, to summarize, reason, synthesize, to make explicit what they're thinking, and to compare. These are just a few amongst the higher order thinking skills, which we call the HOTS, H-O-T-S, the HOTS. So if you want to be a hot teacher, this is what you must work towards. So we look at Bloom's taxonomy, and we see the different levels. These are levels of questioning, and we look at how this impacts. And the pearls and the systemic evaluation focuses on these 4 levels of questioning. And teachers, if our learners read, we need them to understand what they are reading in order to answer the questions that are set for them in these standardized tests. So the first level is to focus on and retrieve explicitly stated information. And that's level 1 here, where the child really has to be able to go to the text, find the answer or just remember what they heard. Then we go to this level 2, which is the learner must be able to make straightforward inferences, which means there must be a level of understanding and interpretation. The third level is interpreting and integrating ideas and information, which is really allowing them to apply what they read and to analyze it. And the last level is to evaluate and critique content and textual elements, which is level 4 up here, where we look at our learners being able to evaluate what they read, anything that they find in their reading. So, in order for us to get our learners to this stage where they are able to do a lot more than just on the surface remember what they've read, we need to come up with some kind of strategy that will assist us. And today we're going to share with you what we call the read aloud and the think aloud strategy. And this strategy will make it possible for us to expose our learners to all three these levels of questioning. So we need to focus on foundational skills. Teachers, we need to isolate those skills that are needed to improve reading and to work on developing those skills. So now we look at why read aloud. Reading aloud to kids, to our learners, has so many benefits. And I remember before I was exposed to this, I didn't understand why this was so important. But reading aloud is a potent pedagogical tool. I don't know about you, but if I think back to my grades 1, 2, 3, 4, that sub A, sub B in my time, then I have these vivid memories of my teacher reading to us, because that was the time to settle down in the class, to just listen, to enjoy the story, to create the images of that story in our heads, and to be immersed in the author's words. And I can go through many of my grades and I can pick out books that really made a difference in my life, memorable books that my teacher read to the class. And when I think of that, every one of those books brings a smile to me to this day. So yes, while reading stories, the teachers may have pointed out certain things or clarified issues. There may have been some discussions as a class. But I don't really remember that. For me, it was just me, the teacher, my class, and that beautiful experience, the joy of listening to a really great story. So that is why read-alouds really are important. So through the pedagogy of the read-aloud, you are able, see this wonderful, what read-alouds do. You are able to enrich language development, their cognitive skills, and their emotional intelligence. It opens doors to new worlds, to new ideas, to new perspectives. You can change a child's world view just by reading them a story, and where that does not necessarily align with the way they understood something. Absolutely beautiful. And then also it fosters that lifelong love for reading and learning. Our little babies today, when we want them to fall asleep, what do? Read them a story or tell them a story. They want to hear your voice. But and then of course, It's a foundational activity that supports and enhances instructional goals. It bridges gaps in understanding, and it makes learning more accessible and enjoyable for all students. On the other hand, read alouds can also help if you taught your child that strategy, the read aloud strategy, the think aloud strategy. It will assist your learners as they go through the schooling, assist them with studying, with retaining information. It will also make you a better writer because you can hear yourself saying the words out loud. It's easier to pick up on, you know, teachers, if you are going to say, there are many children in the class, and you say it enough, that learner will pick up if you use the word is, because they will say to themselves, it does not sound right. And that's what read aloud does. It, it is all done out loud, and that is why when you read a passage out loud, it's so much easier to pick up on mistakes other than reading it silently. So we need to read to our learners. Research has shown that there is a positive link between reading and brain activity. So if you read to your children, chances are that they will be better at extracting the meaning from language and make meaning of their reading. Parents and teachers who do regularly read to their children definitely boost their potential and help them to develop logical skills. So yes, it builds foundational skills, it introduces new vocabulary, it provides a model of a fluent, expressive reader, and it helps children recognize that reading is pleasurable. It's fun, absolutely. So let's look at what should we consider when we want to do a read aloud in our classrooms. Firstly, dedicated, there must be strategic timing. There needs to be strategic timing. You need to dedicate time to read aloud. It's not just about squeezing it into the schedule. It's about making the moments work, making it count. The quality of the engagement that you have during a read aloud will transform the reading into a rich educational experience. Whether it's in a bustling classroom or in a quiet corner, you need to find the right time to make sure that both the reader and the listeners are fully present and ready to embark on this journey together. So what we have to do is we have to schedule our read aloud sessions after recess or lunch, times when students might need help transitioning back into a focused learning environment, because it can serve as a calming activity that re-engages your students' attention. And during this time, you can introduce a chapter to a book, or you can read part of a chapter, or you can read a very short picture book. But do it after lunch, and that can actually turn it into a daily ritual that students look forward to, a time where they are able to calm down. Another important aspect is your book selection. Let's face it, teachers. If somebody reads something to you and it's not something that you're interested in, you're going to listen with half or even a quarter ear. You're going to select what you want to hear and what you want to retain. So the choice of the book that you choose is really pivotal. You need to opt for books that's not only well written, but also that resonates with your learners. And this is important. We need to know our learners. We need to know what they like. We need to know what the in thing is for them at their particular age. And so we need to have books with engaging characters, with riveting plots, and opportunities for readers to model fluent reading. This can turn a simple read aloud activity into an amazing adventure for your child. So these selections offer rich narratives for modeling fluent reading, provides opportunities for discussing the themes as they relate to your learners' lives, and it just creates journeys that can help the student to connect with the text and to connect with each other. Thirdly, we need to create an inviting space. A reading corner, a reading nook, something that's welcoming and comfortable. This must be a special place in the classroom where, it must be the sanctuary for stories. Because in that space, your learners' imaginations can take flight. So create that environment that is inviting for your learners, making them eagerly ready to anticipate, to participate. So you can have a comfortable place with beanbags, with cushions, with posters, or just a mat in your classroom where your learners can sit on. But this space will become the storytelling space. Every child feels good, they feel comfortable, and they know already when they are in that space, it's time to listen. It's time to listen. And we know how we're struggling with listening skills in our classrooms. And then the last issue that I would like to discuss is the whole issue of integrating across the curriculum. Our language is far from being an isolated subject. And read aloud sessions must be the tool that you use to weave seamlessly into the broader education tapestry. All those subjects together. Align the books with curriculum goals, and you will then enrich learning. You'll make it more coherent. You'll make it more meaningful. So also try to draw connections across different texts and subjects, and really foster a deep understanding and an appreciation for the material. So, for example, if you're studying a unit on ecosystems in science, there are many books you can, just for an example, The Great Kapok Tree. Use that book as a read aloud. This story will help our students to understand the value of our rainforests and understand the nature of biodiversity. So after the read aloud, what you can do is engage them in a project where they create their own ecosystem in a bottle. So look how beautifully the science and the language will integrate to get learners to make those connections and be able to read. They will be interested to read in it later on. So we say that after extending, we must extend the narrative beyond the pages. And in order to do this, have the follow-up activities, have the discussions, have the projects that will enhance comprehension and retention. Because if they are doing it like this, in the science lesson like this, I promise you, they're going to remember a lot more. And they're going to think critically about that science content. This approach does not only solidify what was read, but encourages critical thinking and creativity, turning the listeners into active participants in the story. So, when you prepare for your read aloud, my colleagues, what is very important is, what is the purpose for the read aloud? We cannot just read aloud. There must be a purpose, and you'll see this later on. Have you chosen suitable books for the purpose you have set out? Does that book that you have chosen fall within the learner's interest? So, If we're going to develop our read aloud, we need to consider the following. Again, is the book worthy of the reader's and the listener's time and effort? Does the story sound good when read aloud? Will it appeal to your learners? Will it spark conversation? Will it inspire your learners to find or listen to other books on the same topic? And is the story memorable? Would they want to hear it again? You know, as adults, we sometimes read things over and over because we enjoyed it. Now, the purpose for this read aloud that this young lady is doing in this picture is, firstly, she wanted to demonstrate phrased, fluent reading and correct pronunciation. So she wanted to read so that her children could learn about phrasing, they could understand what fluent reading sounds like. And you know, teachers, we have to read punctuation. We have to, you will, part of fluent reading is being able to read punctuation. We read a comma. We read a colon. We read a full stop. Our voices will show learners how we read punctuation. And of course, they're exposed to correct pronunciation. So we need to also develop the learner's interest in the book, in this read aloud. We need to expose them to new vocabulary and language patterns that are part of everyday speech. And we want to entice them through this read aloud to become better readers. So we're going to model good reading skills. And remember, teachers, a read aloud must be an exciting lesson. It must be a joyful celebration. And in this case, we want the read aloud to be flowing. So we may not ask questions. We don't stop to disrupt the flow of the story. May not be any reading or after reading conversations, but we read the story aloud with correct punctuation. We read fluently and we show them deliberately the good phrasing. We do not read too fast. We have to vary our pace. You pause for emphasis. You allow, that pausing allows the children some time to think about what just happened or what might come next. And we use our voices expressively, and we add in hand gestures and facial expressions to help with the understanding of the text. Now remember, you as the teacher are reading to the kids. You're not reading with the kids now. You are reading to them. So they don't need to see the words. You use pictures just to hold the attention. But when you read with them, this is called shared reading. But at the moment, you are doing individual reading. So you simply hold the book up for kids to see the pictures, and if there are any, and that is perfect. That is absolutely perfect. You pick, if there are no pictures, you pick high quality, engaging texts that will really give them a good experience. So, yes, you know, children get very used to the way we do things. And our responsibility as teachers is we need to keep them on their toes. We need to constantly put variations in the way we do things, and that keeps them excited, and that keeps them attentive, and that keeps them right there where you would like them to be. So, vary the way that you do a read aloud. What you could do is, as the picture shows, you can take a book with pictures, you can enlarge it. You can put on plastic or Kevlar and go into the playground. And even if there are no trees and there are poles in the fence, connect those pages in, of course, logical order at each different pole. And you have what we call learners walk the read aloud. So they walk the read. So you stop here with everybody and the teacher reads to them and you go to the next one and you go to the next one. Just putting that variation in, teachers, I promise you, is going to make the world of difference. Or you could invite a guest reader to read aloud. You've got to prep the reader, obviously. But that variation also just gets, you get a different vibe from your children. And also they can read aloud to each other. This is a very, very good way to get them to read aloud. And you know what, teachers? They're going to mimic you. They're going to read like you. If you read aloud to them enough, they are going to read exactly like you read. So these are all important ways that we can vary the strategies of doing a reading aloud. Then, if you do it, this is another read aloud, where the purpose of the read, so remember your purpose. Now here we're looking at a little bit of integration with life skills, with life orientation, where we may be going to look at social emotional learning. Now, social emotional learning includes all of these things. It's about self-awareness, social awareness, decision-making, self-management, relationship skills. So you can choose one of these. Say, for instance, we choose today we want to do a read aloud, and our purpose is to develop or work on relationship skills. Wow. So you find a book. So what I would like you to do is, this is just a little read aloud, very simple, very, very easy, but it is Americanized. It's an American book. So I want you to please be very careful with the reading of full stops here. I would not actually use this, or otherwise I would use it to help to explain to my children what our voices do when we get to a full stop. Because in America they tend to heighten their voice rather than lower it. So I'm going to play this video, and I want you to look at it very carefully, and I want you to start thinking about, if you are looking at relationship skills, where in this book does it show us that, and how can we use this book to as a read aloud to spark debate on this aspect. So I'm just going to play it for you quickly. There we go.
Strictly no elephants. The trouble with having a tiny elephant for a pet is that you never quite fit in. No one else has an elephant. Every day I take my elephant for a walk. His is a very thoughtful sort of walk. He doesn't like the cracks in the sidewalk much. I always go back and help him over. That's what friends do, lift each other over the cracks. Today I'm walking my tiny elephant to number 17. It's Pet Club Day and everyone will be there. Come along, there's a good boy. I coax him the last few feet. It'll be fine. When I look up, there's a sign on the door. Strictly no elephants. My tiny elephant leads me back to the sidewalk. never minding the cracks. That's what friends do, brave the scary things for you. Did you try to go to the pet club meeting too? The girl asks. Yes, I say, but they don't allow elephants. The sign didn't mention skunks, the girl says, but they don't want us to play with them either. They don't know any better, I tell her. He doesn't stink, the girl adds. No, he doesn't, I agree. What if we start our own club? Come along, I say, making certain that my tiny elephant follows me. Because that's what friends do, never leave anyone behind. We can play here, one of our new friends says. All of us. So we paint our own sign. All are welcome. My tiny elephant will give you directions if you need them. Because that's what friends do.
So, my dear colleagues, I'm sure some of you are saying, how can this woman play us a grade 1 story? But can I tell you something? That I can take a group of academics or high intellectuals and they will have a field day with the whole issue of inclusivity, with the whole issue of diversity. So it's not only the level of the book, it is the level of discussion that you can foster in that classroom. So these read-alouds can be followed by really in-depth discussions about the whole issue of the inclusive nature. Our teenagers especially, because you know at the teenage level, many of them feel left out. You can go to town with this. So it's not always the level of the book. It's the purpose of the read aloud. And you can do social awareness, and another book is Be Kind, etc. So what I'm trying to say is our purpose must fit the read aloud. You've got to choose the correct book. You've got to possibly ask the right questions. You've got to guide the right discussions. Okay. So now I want to introduce you to another kind of read aloud, which is called an interactive read aloud. What is an interactive read aloud? You still read a great book or a poem out loud to the class, so it's still the read aloud. But this time, you will not just read it ahead. You would have planned ahead. Because in an interactive read aloud, we lead kids to develop deep understandings. And in addition to the read aloud, we add in a think aloud. To pull back the curtain of a reader's mind, to show them how readers think and what they do when they run into tricky parts in their read, or when they how to begin to put pieces together. We teach them how authors use certain words and certain images to convey meaning. We expose them to a rich, robust array of vocabulary. We need to teach reading skills and strategies. Teachers, We can't just tell our learners, open your book and read. We have to equip them with the proper strategies so that we can make reading a lot more meaningful for our learners. So in the interactive read aloud, we're going to pick little places where we stop and do a quick discussion. Or chat, about a new word, about the content. But remember, we must be sure not to impede the flow of the text. We don't want them to lose the storyline. So we have to pick these stopping points very strategically. You can always read it again another time with a different focus. So an interactive read aloud is a whole group instructional context in which you read aloud a selected text to the whole class, and you occasionally and selectively pause for a conversation. Here your learners will think about, they will talk about, they will respond to the text as a whole group, as a class, or you'll tell them turn and talk, so they work in pairs, or in groups of 3, or in groups of 4. So the reader and the listener actively process the language that is used, the ideas in that book, and the meaning of the text. So in the interactive read aloud, you create important learning opportunities. This is where you can actively model and scaffold understanding. You model to them how to think aloud. You get them involved. You provide a context for learning how to talk. Your learners will learn how to talk about what they have read. You are facilitating a rich interactions as your students read and make sense of their stories as a group. You create a space where meaning is constructed through dialogue, and you allow this rich experience, the interesting texts that are age appropriate, grade appropriate, regardless of the independent or the instructional reading level. So even if your learner is struggling to read, if you do a read aloud and a think aloud, your learner will hear the text clearly, and your learner will participate in the discussion around the text. You build, I love this, you build a community of learners with shared literary knowledge. You expand their knowledge, their language, their vocabulary. You build a foundation of mentor texts for reading and writing lessons. And of course, you're adding the think aloud strategy. So now we're going to look a little bit. I think what is very important at this point is that we must not forget that read and think alouds must be done across the curriculum. Because just like they understand that story through the discussions, they are going to understand the learning content in a science lesson or in a geography lesson. Because remember, teachers, language learning is part of subject learning. Or subject learning is always language learning. We complain our learners can't answer questions. When you ask them questions in the science exam papers, etc. But this is where you are going to make the difference. In every subject, learners need to use language. So grab this opportunity to develop the language through the texts in all subjects, because there's something called a science vocabulary. There's a mathematical vocabulary. Each subject has its own vocabulary, and this is what we are going to look at. So now we are going to look more at what are the benefits of the think aloud. You're reading aloud, you know all the benefits. What's the benefits of the thinking aloud part? The teacher or the students reads the passage out loud from the text. You select or you places where you want to pause the conversation. You think about, you talk about, you respond to the text. So we ask our students to say out loud what they are thinking while they are reading. We want to understand how they are thinking, which thought processes they are using while they are reading. And we want to teach them how to think while we are reading. So, yeah, effective teachers read and think out loud on a regular basis to model this process for our learners. What are the benefits? You are modeling reading fluency, but you are also modeling good thinking habits. You are providing scaffolding and support while your learners are reading. The learners will learn how to critically think through the text and improve their understanding. And you will get your learners to develop into reflective and independent learners. Reflective meaning they are thinking about their reading and they are thinking about their thinking. Independent readers meaning they will now think for themselves. And you will learn through articulating ideas and answering questions. So, if we're going to do an interactive read aloud, again, you must have your purpose in mind. And important, you must read the book before you read it aloud to your students, right? Now you ask yourself, now when do I ask the questions? How many questions do I ask? You are going to be guided by the content of that story or the content of that text, if it's a subject text. Now, you know, for me, post-its are magical things. So you have your book. You are now pre-planning. You have your book. You look at the cover of the book. You say, oh, there is, before they even read this book, I can already get them to think critically about this book. And I can ask them to predict what they think the story is about. But remember, you're going to model the thinking. So I'm going to say, I see a mommy and a daddy frog here. I wonder what the story is about. I think it's about the frog family. So you have modeled to your learners now how you think. They see you looking at the pictures, you're looking at the relationships there, so you're thinking it's a family. Or I could say, oh, I think here's a mommy frog and here are baby frogs. Maybe this book is about how frogs reproduce. That could be a science lesson, right? But you model. What do you think? So you're modeling a predictive question to them. So you need to go through this book and you need to chunk the text. You read 2 or 3 pages or you read 1 page and there's something that catches your attention. In that first page, there is a word there that they may not know, right? So here it may be the word take charge. It may be the term, I tried to take charge. So you can now take a post-it and put a question on there and you can say, okay, let's do an inference question. I wonder what they mean by taking charge. I know when you go to the shop, they say they charge you for the things that you buy, but this has not got to do with that. I wonder what it means. What do you think it means? So you're modeling how you're thinking about that phrase. So eventually your children, when they read and they come across that, they're going to stop and say, I wonder what it is. What does it mean? I know it to mean this, but in this context, it means something else, right? So these are the things that you need to, and you go throughout the book and you put all those post-its in. What questions do I ask when I stop? You can decide Here is some, you can ask them to make a prediction. You can ask them to visualize something. You can just question. You can ask them to make a comparison or make connections, or clarify or reflect or summarize or respond. We want a more thoughtful exploration of the text. And it has to be beyond identification level. It has to be beyond that superficial level. We need our kids to read or to listen to you when you read, and they need to really think about what you are reading. So we ask these questions to make our learners think a lot more deeply. So now we have the purpose, and we've done all that, and we take some time. We know it's based on the learner needs. You have your book. What do we consider? You jot down the notes on your post-its, you place them where you want them in the book, you read through it again, you stop at each note to make sure that the timing is perfect. Some books are totally fine to do it over a couple of weeks, but in general, a picture book is really just for one session. You need a good estimate of how long it will take, then remove sticky notes that are not aligned with the purpose of your story, of your lesson. These interactive read-arounds are a high leverage teaching tool, but the heart of them is everything that makes any read-aloud so magical. It's about the connection. It's about the shared experience. It's about the joy of sharing beautiful literature with kids. Keep the heart of it front and center, and you are sure to provide your students a rich and memorable experience. So now we're going to do an actual demonstration lesson. And if there are 3 or 4 people who would like to be the learners in this, for this demonstration, please raise your hands. Hamotso will mention your names, and then you will answer the questions as well after I read and think aloud. Please, I would love you to interact, teachers. Please do. You know your learners well enough to know what they are going to say. So this specific lesson, I want to integrate this, read and think aloud, with social sciences. I want to develop certain vocabulary, and I want them to think critically through predictions, through inferences, and through making connections. But I also want to model good reading skills. I want to observe all punctuation, and I want to allow my learners to turn and talk. So we have to bear the following in mind. What's the background knowledge that your students have, especially if it's a content subject? What do I want my students to understand after we have read this text? What concepts, what factual information might I need to name in order for this discussion to go ahead? Where can I pause for my students to engage? Do I want to turn and talk? Do I want them to stop and jot? Do I want to stop and draw? Do I want them to give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down? Or do I want them to act out, to gesture or show facial expression? So this is the think and the read aloud session, which is a social science session. Homotso, do we have any people who would like to participate in this?
Hi, Doctor. There aren't
Hi.
any questions at the moment.
Oh, no, but is there anybody who would like to participate in this lesson? Please, teachers, come on, let's make it exciting.
All right, we've got one
that's
from
fantastic.
Angelique.
Okay, what's the name?
Angelique.
Angelique, that's fantastic. Thank you, Angelique. Anybody else?
Right. Anybody else?
Please, people. Just two,
We've
another
got
two.
Justin. We've got another one, Justin.
Thank you, Justin. You are awesome. Another one.
We also have Matombi Zulu.
Matombi. Oh, that's wonderful. Okay, Matombi, Angelique, and Justin. You are going to be the grade 4 learners or grade 5 learners. And this is our read aloud. I'm the teacher. So we're going to do a read and think aloud. So let's look at this. first question I asked just by looking at the cover of the book is a prediction question. And I model how I'm thinking about this. And I ask, I wonder what this story is about. Let me think aloud. I see stars and I see a mountain. So I think it could have something to do with the earth. What do you predict the story is about? Angelique, what do you predict the story is about? Justin, are you guys able to unmute and answer? Please try. Matombi, I heard you, Matombi. What do you predict the story is about? Oh, it's so silent there. All right. So maybe Angelique said, I think it has to do with the planets because I see 3 planets over here, right? I think it has to do with, somebody might see a lot of ships on this side and say, I think it has to do with the sea and how the yachts sail in the sea, right? So all of those things. But it gets them thinking. It gets them thinking. So now we go to the first part. So that as the teacher, I'm going to read aloud. I have already decided that this section here, I've plotted, this is where I want to stop to ask a question. So I read, the planets and the rest of the solar system. The Earth's atmosphere is a layer around the Earth that is about 120 kilometers thick. If you travel more than 120 kilometers from the Earth's surface, you are in outer space. This is where we find the Earth's neighbors, the other planets and stars. So I stop there and I put my post-it because I want to ask an inference question. But I have to model the thinking. So I say, oh, I'm a bit confused now. I am thinking about that word neighbors. I know that the people who live next door to me are my neighbors. So who could possibly be the Earth's neighbors? Does the Earth have neighbors? Matombi, what do you think? Justin? Angelique? Okay. So, I stopped to ask that. So do you see how I'm looking at this word, vocabulary? And they would probably answer me, the Earth's neighbors are the other planets. And I'd say, yes, but who are they? What are they? Give me more information. So they're going to say Venus, Mars, because I think Venus is right next to the Earth, Mars, and they will talk about Mars and the moon, etc. We can also ask, if they don't get that, who is the closest neighbor? So they're going to learn which planet is closest to the Earth, right? So then I'm going to go on and I'm going to read this section because I've decided that I really want a discussion on this. And I read aloud. I'm reading aloud. In outer space, there is no daytime, only nighttime. Talk to your friend about why that is so. So you give your learners an opportunity to turn to their friend next to them and to discuss that issue. And you can take some answers afterwards. Don't you think this is going to be an amazing discussion? I really do. Okay, so we go to the next page. And I read again, because this is a read aloud. They must listen to the fluency and the punctuation, etc. The sun is a very, very hot ball of gas. Deep inside the sun, it is so intensely hot that gases melt together. This melting process gives us light, heat, and energy on Earth. The sun is a star and is at the center of the solar system. So now I'm got to think aloud. I want to ask a predicting question, but I first model it. So I say, let me think aloud. I predict that if the sun was close to the earth, we would get very, very hot. And can you predict what happens on earth if the sun is very strong? So now we're going to get a, oh, here am I. We're going to ask our kids, can you predict what would happen to the people on the earth if the sun's heat is very, very strong? So now they're going to think about that. And they may talk about people are going to have a lot of sunburn. People are going to get heat strokes. People must use suntan lotion. All of those things may come out in their discussion. Then on the same text, I ask a question that is going to get them to make connections. And I say, what would happen if there was no sun? So now you're getting your kids to really engage with the whole issue of night and day, etc., etc. Now remember, this is what you want them to do, because this is the factual information of this social sciences lesson. Next, I'm going to say, there are planets. See how I read a colon? Planets. There are 8 planets, including the Earth. The moon is a cold, dead ball of rock and dust that revolves around the Earth. It is 4 times smaller than the Earth. And I've stopped here for a think aloud, and it's an inference question, and I say, I wonder what is meant by the moon revolves around the Earth. Let me just read it again, because I didn't understand it when I read it the first time. So I'm going to say, the moon is a cold, dead ball of rock and dust that revolves around the Earth. Do you know what the world revolves means? The child is going to look back at this. Now, it's inference, because in an inference question requires the child, the answer is not here, but there is a clue here. There's a clue over here, somewhere in the text, that tells you what revolves mean. And that clue is the word around. So you have taught them now that if they don't understand something, they can read it again. So they're going to take that clue around and add their own knowledge that around means moving around. And they're going to say to you, revolves means to move around the Earth. Isn't that fabulous? Then I'm going to ask a summarizing question. I'm going to say there are 8 planets. I'm not sure if that is still factually correct. Let me think. I only remember 2. I remember that the Earth is a planet and the moon is a planet. Can you tell me the names of all the other planets? And now you get your kids to interact with you, right? We're reading the next part of this text. When we pass the dwarf planet, we leave the solar system. Now we are into deep outer space. Here we find the following. The stars are intensely hot balls of gas like the sun, but very, very far from us. There are billions upon billions of stars. We could never count them all. Stars come in many different sizes. Our sun is a medium-sized star. So now I want them to do a little bit of an evaluation on this content. And I say, this reminds me of when I was little, you know, learners. We as children would lay on the grass at night and look at the twinkling stars in the sky. You see how I'm making connections here? They are high up in the sky, And that's why they look very, very small. Now I'm asking them this question. I wonder if the sun is really a star. Because the sun looks much bigger than the stars in the sky. What do you think? And they may say, yes, it's bigger because it's a medium-sized star. They may say that the sun is closer to the earth, that's why it is bigger, etc., etc. But you've given them something to think about, right? Now next time they read something, they're going to make connections with their own experience first. And then the understanding will be deeper. We call our solar system and outer space the universe. The universe is everything that exists, and we know very little about it. I want them connected to the world now. And I say, I heard that word universe before. Just let me think about it. Yes, I watched the Miss Universe beauty competition. I wonder what it means if you are Miss Universe. So now already they're going to say, it's the most beautiful person in the whole world. So they're seeing the magnitude of the universe. But I'm also going to ask him an imagine question. I wish I could travel through the universe. I wonder if I will see aliens. What do you think? So it's about life on other planets. To see how we bring it, but we're asking them to imagine. So even if they say, yes, I do think there's aliens out there, you need to ask them, why do you think so? Right? So all of these things, my dear colleagues, we get them to think on a very, very different and a much deeper level. So I think I've actually gone over my time already. I do apologize for that. But here are some sentence starters. For you, when you think aloud, I agree with because I wonder if my perspective is different because I'm confused about. It's fine to let your learner know you're confused and show your learner how you think about being confused, how you get out of it. I reread that portion, so important that they reread, that they go back if they don't understand, or this reminds me of, or this relates to because. And they can predict, they can picture, they can question, they can remind, confuse, reread, big idea, and believe and wonder. Isn't that beautiful? You're giving them an opportunity to just think beyond the text. My dear colleagues, I say thank you very much. I'm sorry that I went over time. But I do hope that this is something that you will, before you shoot it down, try it. You are going to be amazed by your children's responses. Thank you very, very much, Hamotso.
Oh, thank you so much, Doctor. That was amazing. And I'm sure all our guests had an incredible time. I see all the emojis, all the reactions, all the hearts, all the
I
clapping
can't
hands,
see it.
thumbs up. So I think, yeah, that's a resounding cheers, round of applause for you. Thank you so much. I'm just trying to quickly see if we have questions. I know we said that the most common question was people requesting the recording. So we will be making the recording available. We will send out an email and everyone will receive that. So yeah, I saw a lot of the engagement with the answers. I
Oh,
don't really
you
think there was an
did.
outstanding question per se. But please, if you have any further questions for the doctor, if you'd like any clarity on any points that you want, clarity about, please feel free to drop us an email. We'll forward it to Dr. Phillips and she'll assist with that. But yeah, like I said, we will be sending that recording tomorrow. So if you have your colleagues who've missed out, I know there was an issue with some colleagues registering. Please do let them know that we will be sharing that tomorrow. So yeah, they won't necessarily have missed out after all. We're making sure that we are covering everyone. So yeah, Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of our webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate the time that you've taken out to, reach through all these efforts that Macmillan and doing in partnership with Dr. Phillips. So thank you. Have a wonderful day further. And again, happy World Read Aloud Day.
Oh, wow.
Fantastic.
Thank you, my dear colleagues. Thank
Thank
you
you.
so
Cheers,
much.
everyone. From
Bye-bye.
Macmillan.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Take care. All the best for 2025.